Hey everybody, Disgruntled Specialist here. We are on part 7 of the refining and crafting portion of the New World Series. Uh, we're going to get into some armor crafting, as I said. We're going to look at cloth, leather, armor. We're going to look at bags. We're going to look at trinkets and kind of get an idea of what you're going to need to craft some things. So we're going to start at the outfitter station. With that said, we're going to try to break this down really simple because it's a lot to cover. So here it is. Cloth. I'll give you the numbers. When I'm reading off the numbers for these, it's always going to go cloth, leather, metal. And I can't stress enough, when you're making cloth armor, the cloth you're using, the tier of the cloth you're using has to match the tier of the armor you're making. The leather and the metal in this case are secondary. They're just higher it is, it's higher secondary match you're using, the better outcome you're going to get for the gear you're crafting. But with that said, here are the numbers on that. So for the headpiece, it's going to be 11:6:1. That stays the same. That ratio stays the same all the way through your crafting. The next one we're going to look at is a chest piece. 22:12:1 stays the same all the way through. The only thing that's going to change is the tier of the cloth. Gloves, 4:4:1 stays the same all the way through. Once again, the tier of the cloth is the only thing that matters. The pants, 10:6:2. Once again, same ratio. And then the shoes, 5:3:1. That's going to stay the same all the way through your crafting. As you progress through the chain, it's just the tier of cloth you're going to be using. As you can see, tier 3, we got our satin. That's our next one. Then our silk. Then our infused silk. There is a variation, however, for cloth armor that starts at satin. Before we move on that, just to give you an idea, if you want to craft a whole set, because you're not just crafting it to level, you actually are crafting it also to build it for yourself. Let me give you the total numbers for one of each piece. So in order to craft a full armor set here, you're going to need 52 cloth, whatever tier you're making. And then for your secondary regents, you're going to need 31 leather and 6 metal. And that will craft you one of each piece of armor. Also, don't get too caught up in like the first part of the cloth armor. There's like a linen bonnet, linen hat. There's no difference. The material cost is the same. It's completely cosmetic. There's no stat change, no armor resistance change. It's just purely cosmetic. So our next variation are robes, and as I said, this starts at satin. So this is cosmetic, but it does have some variation in your resources you need, and it does have a armor rating change. So for robes, you're going to have an increase in elemental resistance while you reduce your physical resistance. So with that said, let's look at the values. So if you're trying to craft a headgear, it's going to be 12:4:1. That stays the same as you progress through silk and infused silk. Secondaries are leather and metals. And then your primary has to match the tier. The tier of the primary has to match the tier of the armor. So headgear, 12:4:1. Robes, 26:8:1. Then we got our gloves, 6:2:1. The pants, 12:4:2. And the shoes, 6:2:1. So that ratio will stay the same, just upgrading the tier of the cloth. With that said, if you want to make the robe set at whatever tier for actual wearing, the total cost of this is going to be 62 of your primary cloth regent. So it has to match the tier, but 62 of that. Your secondaries can be 20 of the leather and 6 of the metal. So, and as I said, if you're making it for yourself, you probably want to just go ahead and invest the higher material for the secondaries, but it's not a requirement. And then, so what is the difference though between the robes and the regular cloth armor? Well, the difference between material cost is an additional 10 cloth with a reduction in 11 leather, and then the metal cost is equivalent. So that's cloth armor in a nutshell. Might do a video later on more like in detail about like how to optimize leveling, looking at the experience you get for each pieces as well as material usage, but that's cloth armor for you. Leather, we're going to jump into leather here real quick. So for leather armor, these ratios also stay the same, but instead of cloth being your primary crafting material, leather becomes your primary. So the tier of the leather has to match the tier of the armor. But let's go over the stat or the ratio for each of the armor pieces now. For headpiece, it's 11, 6, 1, and that's leather, cloth, metal. So, and I'll keep repeating these numbers. That's the order I'm giving them in: leather, cloth, metal. So for headpiece, 11, 6, 1. Chest piece, 22, 12, 1. And then for gloves, 4, 4, 1. For the pants, 10, 6, 2. And then finally for the boots, 5, 3, 1. If you're crafting this whole piece or this whole set for yourself, keeping in mind you need to have equivalent tier leather for the tier armor you're making, the total value of this is going to be 52 leather, 31 cloth, and 6 metal, with cloth and metal being your secondaries that can change and alter the outcome of your armor. So leather also has a variant. It's the fur variant, and what's interesting about this is it actually introduces a fourth material and replaces cloth in the mix. So with the fur armor, we're gonna, when I recite off these numbers like I have been, it's going to be fur, leather, and metal because cloth has been removed from the equation. So for this, your fur is your primary. This has to match. The tier of the fur has to match the armor. I've gotten a little bit of fur. I want to do a video later on actually optimizing farming fur, but I'm still doing some research into it to see how to what actually gives it the most or highest drop rate. So with that said, fur, leather, metal is our ratios here. So for the headpiece, it's going to be 12, 4, 1. For the coat, it's going to be 26, 8, 1. For the gloves, it's going to be 6, 2, 1. And then for our pants, it's going to be 12, 4, 2. And finally, for the boots here, we have 6, 2, 1. So leather and metal are your secondaries. They can change the outcome of your finished product, but our fur is what is going to be our restriction, and that stays the same as you progress through the different fur armors as you level your armoring skill. So let's look at the total cost for fur and then also see what's the big deal other than cosmetically it changing. What's the big deal about making fur armor? So for fur armor, you're going to need 62 of your fur, whatever tier you're crafting. Then you're going to have your secondaries, your 20 leather, and your 6 metal. So some of the bonuses overall crafting, you're going to take away having used 32 of your leather. And fur drops as fur, so there's no refining of the fur. It's just, so if you can get fur, in some ways it could be more cost effective than wasting cloth. So you're going to need 62 of your fur. That's your primary region, 20 of your secondary leather, and 6 of your secondary metal. Total cost is 32, a reduction of 32 leather, an addition of 62 fur, since it's a new material and there was no fur originally. The metal is equivalent either way, and then 31 cloth is negated from the total cost of making one full armor set of the fur armor. So that's the variant there for you. The stat change here is additional elemental resistance with a reduction in physical resistance. We're not going to go over expedition replicas right now. That's a whole different subset. You're not going to use it for leveling. I mean, you might get mats for it, but it's just, you're going to be able to farm other stuff faster. We may do a separate video on that, separate from this series. Bags. Bags are a big deal. If you don't play this game, just know bags are a big deal, and you'll learn that quickly. If you do play this game, you know how important bags are. It's probably one of the hottest commodities you can build at the outfitting station. With that said, your primary region for all bags is leather. So the tier of leather has to match the tier of the bag, with cloth and metal being your secondaries that can impact the outcome. I always like to invest the highest grade cloth and metals when I'm making bags, especially because the rune of holding that you buy, the cost of it is greatly increased as you level through your faction's reputation, because you can only get it for faction points and gold from the faction representative. So that aside, always know there's a rune of holding. The rune of holding will go up by 1 tier every bag, and it's going to increase in both faction point cost and gold cost. But as far as our mats that we can farm, it's always going to be, and this is in leather, cloth, metal order, 45, 25, 10. And that's the same all the way through the bag listing. Never changes. So it's always going to be 45, 25, 10. So that's bags. Pretty simple. So we're going to close down armor. We're going to cover amulets here real quick because it's technically an armor item. But first, we're going to scroll down here and look at trinket components. The silver chain is 5 silver ingots. The hook is 5 silver ingots. The band is 5 silver ingots. The silver setting is only 4. Then we go up a little bit. So as the tier goes up, we get a little bit more cost in making these different attachments. So 6 gold ingots, 6 gold ingots, 6 gold ingots, 4 gold ingots. So the setting stays the same. And if we go down to our settings for platinum, once again, it goes up by 1. Platinum, 7 ingots, 7 ingots, 7 ingots, and then 4. So the setting is going to stay the same, but our augmented pieces that change what kind settings are required for everything. But the hook, the band, and the chain change whether it's going to be a earring, necklace, or ring. And then there are Asmodean settings, still 4. Chain, 8. Hook, 8. And then somewhere in here is the band. There we go. Band, 8. So everything except the setting goes up by 1 per tier. Just keep that in mind as we look into the jewel crafting, because for jewel crafting, the actual crafting portion of these rings and necklaces and earrings, you can actually subset. You can switch out the chains, the hooks, the bands. The tier impacts what you create. So obviously the higher quality bands and the higher quality setting and the higher quality precious metal you use, the better. But this is also where you craft those settings. The only thing you don't craft when you're making these amulets and these rings and these all the various trinkets is the actual stone. That's done at a stone cutting station, and we did look a little bit into that already at that previous video. I think that was episode 4 or 5 in the series. So with that said, it's always 1-1-1. It's always gonna be 1-1-1. It's always gonna be 1 setting, 1 metal, and then 1 of the variations of what you're making. So as I said, necklace is chains, band is rings, and then hook is earrings. So this first option will change based on what type of jewelry you're crafting, but the setting will always be a setting, and the precious metal will always be a precious metal. So the precious metals are, your silver, your gold, and your platinum. You're always going to need 1 ingot to craft these. That doesn't change all the way through all of these. I haven't gotten high enough to see whether orichalcum is considered precious metal, because we do use orichalcum later on to make some of the higher settings and chains and hooks. So I'm not sure if it's also considered both a precious metal and a crafting metal. That I'd have to actually test when I get high enough up there to play with that. I'm pretty sure though it's going to be silver, gold, and platinum for the actual crafting piece, even though you can make orichalcum hooks, necklaces, and bands. So that's jewel crafting. It's really simple. Don't get overwhelmed by all of these. They're basically all the same thing, just different stones that you've cut. With different passives, and I want to actually go through this in a separate video to actually see what all of the gem bonuses are, but we'll get to that later on in the a different video. We're going to go over consumables in another part of this series, because I'm gonna kind of throw that together with potions and arcana. So we're going to skip that for now. And repair kits, I haven't seen a lot of use for them, so we're not really going to worry about those. So that is everything at the outfitting station. There's a lot here, a lot to cover here. But that covers most of what we're doing today. The only other piece of armor crafting is the metal armors, which are done at the forge. And we're going to go run over here and do that real quick. So, going to close the weapons on. So here's our armors. So for our armor crafting, the ratios are still going to stay the same. Of course, metal is going to be our primary now. Tier of the metal has to match the tier of the armor. Leather and cloth of our secondaries that impact our outcome. So with that said, here are the ratios, and they're always going to be metal, leather, cloth in that order. So for the helmet, it's going to be 8-6-4. For the chest piece, 16-12-7. For the gauntlets, 4-4-1. For the greaves, 10-6-2. And for the boots, 5-3-1. Stays the same. The ratio is the same all the way through crafting. There is a variant that starts at steel that has a slightly different ratio, and that's our heavy armor. Before I get in this, real quick to cover, if you want to make a full set of the just the regular standard armor, you're going to need 43 of your equivalent tier metal, and then 31 of your leather, which is a secondary, and 15 of your cloth, which is also the other secondary. And then, so the heavy metal armor is going to be a little bit different than that. So for the heavy metal armor, what we're dealing with for the ratio is, and this is once again metal, leather, cloth. It's going to be for the helmet 10-4-4. For the breastplate, 28-7. For the gauntlets, 6-2-1. For the greaves, 12-4-2. And for the boots, 6-2-1. That ratio stays the same. Tier of the metal has to match the tier of the armor. And that's basically it. The secondaries are going to impact our outcome. For the heavy armor, what are we looking at? 54 of your primary metal, 20 of your secondary leather, and 15 of your secondary cloth. And then once again, cosmetically, there's a change, but also this is increased physical and a reduction in elemental resistance. So it makes you a little bit tankier. What does it look like for the cost change? Well, the cost change, I did read them off, but just to summarize, you're going to be spending 11 more metal ingots in creating the heavy armor, but you're going to save 9 leather, and the cloth is equivalent. And that kind of covers it. Those are all your armor sets. As a little bonus, if you made it to the end of the video, I am actually going to cover one extra thing that I found as I was looking through here and verifying my numbers. And I call it the end game armor. So if you look at the top of your armor crafting tier, there's some weapons that are high item level, but I was seeing these. I saw this 200 armor crafting, and I realized this is a set. So for armor crafting, this one's pretty cool. It's not the coolest I've seen, but you have your fur-lined Orc Alchem helm, or set. This is the helm I'm looking at, but the fur-lined Orc Alchem. And this does have one of the highest item level or item score ranges, and some of the highest armor values, I would say, roughly. Although it's interesting that this is actually higher elemental on some pieces, and then, no, it is all pieces. So this is actually an elemental resistance set. It does take the top tier material, Orc Alchem ingots. This is like, you can get some stats in this one, but as far as like just your basic crafting gear that you want to stat yourself, this is the top tier. And we're going to actually pop back over to outfitting station, look at the leather and cloth ones, because they're I think they look cooler. This one looks kind of, so-so. It looks plain. I don't know. It may look cooler when you actually put it on. Maybe that's not like a true image of it. But for this, at the end of the game, what are you looking at if you can craft it and you don't already have stuff that's better from dungeons? Well, to make this whole Orc Alchem set, we're going to be looking at needing roughly, let's see here. I actually have notes on this somewhere. Oh, Looks like oh, there it is. Okay, so for the fur lined one, I had to write them all down because it was like a last minute like find. I was like, hey, look at that. So for the fur lined one, you're gonna need roughly let's see here, we got 30 32, 38, 44 of your orc alchem ingots. And then you're gonna need let's see here, uh 14, 16, yeah, 20 leather, and then you're gonna do roughly 15 cloth. So it actually follows the same as the heavy armor kind of ratio there. But I thought it was kind of cool. If you haven't like been looking through the Unlearned, there is in-game armor sets, and I said this isn't the coolest one. So let's go over here real quick. And just to save you guys time, because this video is going on kind of long, I won't read off the totals because I didn't write them down. When I saw them, you'll just know what to look for. So for the leather, it's called the Beast Hunters. So if it actually looks like the imaging, it's pretty cool. Obviously, you're gonna need your infused leather for this, but it's a pretty gnarly looking set. And then honestly, this is pretty good, but it takes second place to the last one, which is our cloth armor, and that is our Shade Walkers armor. I think this is probably going to be one of the coolest looking sets I can think of. I already run cloth because I like the high mobility, and I like the extra 20% damage buff you get for wearing all light armor. So I am super excited to wear this like cool masked looking crazy thing. Anyway, if you've watched the end of the video, that was my little bonus. If you haven't noticed, there's some cool looking tier armor at the end. Hopefully that's exciting for you. Hope to catch you next time on the series. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and then I also hope this was helpful. If you did find this helpful, please go ahead and click the subscribe button, the bell icon. Try and follow me on Twitch. I would really appreciate the support so I can keep trying to make good content and try to get information that helps you. So have a great rest of the day.